Hi, I'm Immunity Zero, and thank you for listening to Scream Radio. As cliche as it sounds, it was just a normal day for me. I woke up, dragged my ass out of bed, and took a shower. After that, I got dressed and ate the same breakfast food as always. A fucking bowl of cereal. But today, I was feeling extra fancy, so I microwaved some bacon to go with it. After I ate, I grabbed my keys and got in my car and drove to my job at the local grocery store. I walked inside and went to my assigned lane. This was my day in a nutshell, and just like my life, it was completely unfair. I missed out on so much in life. I've never left the state of Kentucky. I have no kids, no girlfriend, and no family that is even halfway decent. I am almost completely alone in life. The only friend I have is my friend James. We have been knowing each other since 6th grade, and he's always been there for me through thick and thin. We have made friends throughout the years, but they all got married and had children. So James and I are the only ones who are still enjoying the single life. We don't see our old friends much because they don't really get much time to hang out between their wives, kids, and jobs. There was one thing about that night that made things different, and it was that James and I were going to have a horror movie marathon at his apartment. We each chipped in on a list of horror movies that we agreed on. We ended up spending $50 on horror movies. After doing the math, we had about 12 hours worth of movies to watch. I was looking so forward to it that I almost forgot to clock out when I left work. When I got to his house, he greeted me at the door.
"Hey, what's up, man? Did you get these stuff?"
He asked casually. "What's this look like to you?" I said. "Green eggs?" I said, holding up the bag of chips and other junk food.
"Yeah, bust my balls and I'll kick your ass,"
James warned. "Yeah, right," I sarcastically said as I walked past him into his apartment.
"So what's on first?" James
asked. "I say we watch The Eye, starring Jessica Alba," I suggested.
Nah. Nightmare on Elm Street, dude.
James disagreed. "Dude, you know I've seen that movie like 20 times. Let's flip on it," I said. "Heads." I took a quarter out of my pocket and I flipped it into the air. The quarter went into the air and fell on the floor, and it landed on tails. "Shit!" I shouted. After sitting through 30 minutes of the movie, I began to drift off into sleep. I woke up when James turned the lights on and the credits were rolling.
"Hey, rise and shine, Simon,"
James said. "What time is it?" I asked.
"Well, it's 11:30 in the a.m., but look outside, dude."
I looked out of one of his windows and saw that it was still dark outside. "Why is it still dark outside?"
"I don't know, Simon. Scientists are saying the sun's light isn't shining on the earth anymore, man."
"Then why aren't we freezing to death?" I asked.
"Indeed. That is the mystery. What is keeping us warm, huh?"
I pulled out my phone and Googled the news. I then got on my local news website and saw that riots were occurring. It was downright crazy. People were breaking windows, setting cars on fire, fighting each other. The worst thing I saw was a guy bashed a woman's head in with a baseball bat. I turned off the broadcast and saw that James was almost as pale as a ghost.
"Dude, that fucking riot is downtown. That's less than 5 miles from here."
Suddenly my phone rang. I looked at the caller ID and saw that it was my Uncle Bobby. "Hello?"
"Simon, take whatever you can and meet me in Bedeville."
Bobby told me in a very frantic tone of voice. "Wait, have you been watching the news? It's crazy out."
"Just do it, Simon. Meet me at the address I'm about to tell y'all."
I told James to hand me a pen and paper. I then wrote down the address Uncle Bobby wanted me to go to. I got it down, I told him.
Good. Now when you get down there, ask the bartender for Dan.
And after that he hung up.
Well, what was that all about?
Asked James. That was Uncle Bobby, I replied. He wants me to go to some bar in Beattyville.
Man, I don't know if we should trust that guy. Dude, all our lives he's been obsessed with that end-of-the-world shit. Remember when we were in high school, he paid us to build that bomb shelter?
Yes, I do, but look.
You look. I'm going with you, because I don't trust that dude. And yeah, something really weird is going on, but I doubt it's doomsday and shit, right?
Let's go, I said. I grabbed my overnight bag and we made our way to my car. After putting my bag into the trunk, I got in the car and pulled out of James's driveway. Thankfully, James lived close to the freeway, but traffic was terrible. The jam was worse than any that I've ever been. Even worse than a U of K and a U of L basketball games. The whole freeway was a parking lot. Fucking Christ, I yelled. Where the hell are these people going?
Shh, quiet, listen,
James said. I stopped talking and listened to the radio. There was breaking news reporting that various animal attacks were occurring throughout Louisville and other cities in the country. Cats and dogs were getting loose and attacking people. Birds were swooping down and clawing at people. It was not all birds, but ones that people were keeping as pets. It was only domesticated animals that were attacking people. There were no reports of zoo animals doing any harm, but this whole situation seemed like a whole lot of calamity. The announcer also said that people should head to a military safe zone in Lexington.
Yeah, maybe we should go there, man,
said James. To Lexington? No. Look, I have no idea what's going on, but I think we should trust Bobby this time.
Oh, come on, Simon. Remember back in 2012 when he was convinced the Mayan calendar was right? We were all fucked.
I rolled my eyes. We are not going to Lexington, I shouted. I don't want to hear any more bullshit talk about how crazy my uncle is or what's going on. Got it?
All right, take it easy, gunslinger,
James replied, surprised by my outburst. I didn't know if this was a temporary problem or something new entirely, but I remembered one important fact that Uncle Bobby taught me about the end of the world. When civilization falls, it falls fast. Major cities looked like they were suffering pretty badly from what was going on, so I knew Lexington was a bad idea. It did not take very long for traffic to die down and for things to speed back up again. I continued the drive to Beattyville. James and I kept quiet during the drive, and we continued to listen to the news. After a couple of hours, I turned the radio off. I knew things were getting bad, and I was tired of hearing it over and over again. When we made it to Beattyville, I put the address of the bar on my GPS, and I followed the directions. When we arrived at the bar, I noticed that it looked more like an old shack than an actual building. The place reminded me of a bootleg barbecue restaurant in Louisville. After parking, James and I got out of the car, and when we tried to go into the bar, the door was locked. So I tried knocking.
We're closed,
A voice said from inside the bar. I knocked again.
I said we're closed, damn it.
The person shouted.
Bobby sent us,
James said. The door flung open and a tall, muscular, wild-eyed man stood before us. He wore a pair of tattered jeans and an I Heart Beer t-shirt. The camouflage baseball cap on his head had seen better days in its old age.
Bobby sent you too?
The man said with a deep southern drawl.
Yes, sir.
James replied.
Shit, that man has a bigger tab than a horse's dick.
I'll pay his tab if you let us in. I promised. Things aren't so good out here. The man led us into the bar.
Damn, this place looks worse and more run down than Bobby does.
James commented. I gave him a dirty look.
Yeah, my dad hasn't taken good care of this place since Grandpa died.
The man said. Is your dad named Dan? I asked.
Yeah, my name's Chad, by the way.
The man said. I'm Simon, and that's James.
Nice to meet you guys. Now, why did Bobby send you guys here?
I don't know, but I think it has to do with what's going on in the cities.
Well, I can assure you guys are safe here in town because it's always been quiet and boring here in Beattyville,
said Chad. Can you call your dad for us because for whatever reason we need to talk to Dan?
No problem.
Chad put out his cell phone and called Dan.
Son of a bitch.
Chad said firmly. What? I said.
The fucking phone lines are down.
Ah, great.
James remarked.
Well, he just went to run some errands about 30 minutes ago. He's probably on his way back.
Have you been watching the news? I asked.
Yeah, it just seems like people are going crazy over something as usual. I don't know if it has to do with politics or what, but I've never seen riots like this before.
Chad replied. People's pets are going nuts, man.
What?
Suddenly the door burst open and an older guy came scrambling inside. He then slammed the door behind him. He was breathing really hard from being out of breath from running. I also noticed that he was holding a hunting rifle in his right hand.
My truck broke down,
He said.
Are you okay, Dad?
Said Chad.
No. Mrs. Davis's dog broke loose and tried to attack me, so I had to shoot them. Next thing I know, 10 more dogs showed up. I shot 4 of them, but more just kept coming.
I heard the sound of dogs barking outside, so I looked out the window. I counted 15 dogs outside that were barking ferociously. Holy fuck! I said.
Well, now what do we do?
Asked James. I don't know, I replied fearfully as I looked back at James. I said we wait for Uncle Bobby to get here. He will have some ideas.
Who knows how long that'll be?
Chad said.
I don't want to be stuck in the bar, being held hostage by dogs.
Suddenly we heard the sound of tires squealing. I looked out the window and saw an RV storming into the parking lot of the bar, hitting some of the dogs in the process. The dogs began to surround the RV. Next thing I knew, the front door of the RV burst open and someone fired a shotgun at one of the dogs. Its head exploded and blood and brain matter went everywhere. Frightened by the blast, the dogs backed off a little bit. That was when I saw the man that we had been waiting for, our crazy Uncle Bobby. He jumped out of the RV holding his 12-gauge shotgun and began running towards the bar. One of the dogs tried to get in front of him on his way to the front door, but that dog was soon made into Swiss cheese by Bobby's gun. Uncle Bobby stormed into the bar and slammed the door behind him.
We have to go right now.
Uncle Bobby frantically shouted. James gave him a weird look.
Are you crazy? Those fucking dogs out there will...
I'll hold off the dogs, James. All y'all just get to the RV.
If you think I'll go out there with those dogs, Bobby, you crazy.
Chad said.
Well, what choice do we have?
James asked.
Can't just fucking sit here.
Dan is right, and so is Bobby. I told Chad. We have to get out there,
Here's the plan.
Bobby said.
Dan and I will hold off the dogs while you guys get to the RV. All right, let's go,
shouted Bobby. We burst out of the door and ran towards the RV. Uncle Bobby and Dan shot in the air to get the dogs away from us. I saw them move to another part of the parking lot as the dogs went in their direction. As we were heading in the direction of the RV, one of the dogs saw us and barked to get the other dog's attention. I sped up and made it to the RV. I then opened the door and jumped inside. James and Chad followed behind me. I could hear the dogs barking outside the RV as I fired up the vehicle. I then heard the sound of the dogs screaming as gunfire invaded the air. I looked out the window and saw Uncle Bobby and Dan making their way to the RV. They fired shot after shot as they ran, but out of nowhere, Dan ran out of ammo. He began to run as fast as he could to the RV, but it was no use. The dogs surrounded him, and within seconds they were all over him. I watched in horror as they tore him apart. They ripped chunks of meat from his body as they dug into his torso.
Dad, no!
Chad yelled. I heard the RV door open.
Drive, drive, drive!
Uncle Bobby hollered. I put the RV in gear and drove away from the bar as quickly as possible without killing us. Uncle Bobby walked over and sat in the front seat next to me. Where to? I asked.
The bomb shelter. It's safe there.
We continued to drive down the dark back road with Bobby telling me where to go, but without warning, a girl jumped in front of the RV, waving her arms. I slammed on the brakes, hoping to God I would not hit her. When the RV stopped, she ran to the side of the RV and got in. I heard the sound of dogs barking, so I literally put the pedal to the metal and floored it out of there.
Thank you.
Said the girl.
Who are you?
Asked Chad.
I'm Sarah.
What happened to you? I asked.
My uncle's hunting dogs just went berserk. And the next thing I know, they mauled him to death. So I ran out of there. They chased me all the way down to this road, and here I am now. I just need to know what the hell is going on here. Why hasn't the sun come up? It's 2:30 in the afternoon.
We don't know, I said. Cats and dogs are going nuts. The sun hasn't come up.
Turn on the radio.
Sarah said. When we turned on the radio, all we got was static. We tried changing the stations, and after so many, we finally found a news station. It was telling people which cities were falling and how bad the catastrophes were. New York City had fallen, and so had Louisville, Kentucky. Omaha, Nebraska had fallen as well. After we heard that, we turned off the radio.
Man, it is like total fucking anarchy out there,
Said James.
I know.
Said Uncle Bobby.
Civilization has fallen, and it's fallen fast.
Uncle Bobby gave me directions to the bomb shelter, and I followed them. I must have driven for at least an hour on this back road before finally I was told to drive down this dirt road. I drove down an isolated dirt road for a few minutes, then Uncle Bobby told me to stop. We all got out of the RV and we began walking into the forest. We must have walked at least a mile before we found the bomb shelter. It looked like a manhole in the middle of the woods with a small window on it. After Uncle Bobby moved leaves and dirt off the door, he unlocked it and we climbed inside. We had to climb down a 20-foot ladder before we were actually inside. When we made it inside, I saw that the place looked like a big apartment. It had shagged carpeting, there was a flat screen on the wall, as well as a couch that sat in front. In the next room was a kitchen and a sink with running water, as well as a refrigerator filled with food. There was also a table to sit at in the kitchen and a chandelier above the table.
This shelter has 4 bedrooms, so since there's 5 of us, one of y'all has to share a room.
Said Bobby. I don't mind sharing a room with James, I said.
Good.
Bobby agreed.
You 2 get the twin beds. Anyway, I'm gonna go find the rest of the family.
Are you crazy?
Asked Sarah.
Sorta.
Uncle Bobby joked.
Look, I want to make sure the rest of the family is safe, and maybe bring them here. So I'm going to be gone for a few days.
A few days?
Chad reacted.
It's your job to take care of each other while I'm gone. So don't leave the shelter. Don't let anyone in unless it's me. And do not, under any circumstances, touch the gun container. I don't need any missing limbs or splattered brains all over the place.
How will we know it's you, Uncle Bobby? I asked.
I'll knock 3 times, and then stop for 5 seconds, and then knock 2 more times. So be listening for me. If I'm not back in 3 days, don't come looking for me. It will only get worse out there. Okay, I'm out of here.
Uncle Bobby mused as he walked away from us.
Be safe.
We heard him walk over to the ladder and start climbing. We then heard the door slam, and not long afterwards he locked it. We were now alone in the shelter as the world continued to fall to pieces.